Hello, and welcome to the Wine Educate podcast, where we explore WSET education, study tips, and practical advice for wine enthusiasts and professionals. This is episode 17. I'm your host, Joanne Close, and today we're going to do another tasting. Wasn't originally going to do it, but after talking about acidity and sweetness in the last two episodes, I think it's perfect timing for us to do a tasting note on a sweet wine. So the wine I'm going to use is a Tokai, and the specific wine is the 2019 Aurum Metamorphosis Tokai 5 Petunia. So we sell this in the shop. We sell it for like $60. Good, but double check that. Anyway, it's somewhat affordable. You can find one in maybe your local shop, but you know what? You don't have to get the exact one, okay? This is another testable wine. So it's going to be pretty consistent across the board for all the different producers of Tokai. Now, this is a Tokaji Aszú, not a Tokaji Essentia. Please don't try to buy Tokaji Essentia. That stuff's really expensive, but the Tokaji Aszú is more manageable. You could split it with a couple of your other fellow classmates, or you don't need to have a wine to do this at all. It's just a really good testable wine, and it's going to reinforce some of the acidity and sweetness components that we talked about before. Also, if you have not listened to episode 10, that's a good one to listen to because it's going to go into detail about the SAT, the standard approach to tasting, which is what I'm going to use for this tasting note. So just a little bit of a description about botrytis, because this wine has been affected by botrytis. Botrytis is actually a rot. It's not very attractive once you really take a close look at it. When it's something that you want in the vineyard, you're hoping the vines, the grapes rather, are affected, then you refer to it as noble rot. If this is something that you really don't want setting in on your grapes and you're actively using different methods to not have this happen in your vineyard, then you call it gray rot. So it's all about whether you want it or you don't. So certain wines that have been affected by botrytis, well, Tokai, which we're doing today, also Sauterne, and some German wines. So Beerenauslese and Trockenbeerenauslese, they have berry in the name. They have been affected by, the grapes used have been affected by noble rot. So in order for this to set in the vineyard, you need specific growing conditions. So these vines are often planted close by to a water source, like a river, because they need misty mornings. That's for the rot to set in. And then they need long, dry, sunny afternoons. That's to help prolong the effect of the botrytis so they don't just rot and drop off right away. It's more of a gradual process, because what botrytis does is it pricks little holes in the grape. And by doing so, the moisture in the pulp evaporates out. So that's why you need those long, sunny afternoons. This is not something that's guaranteed to happen every year. And then some years you may get quite a lot of botrytis infected berries, and other years, maybe not so much. So not guaranteed every year. You have to hand harvest these guys, and not just hand harvest, like you're picking individual berries. You're not just picking the bunch, because there could be various levels, degrees of botrytis infected berries within a bunch. So you need skilled labor to go through and pick one by one these berries. So this doesn't happen in one day. This can happen over a couple of weeks and can take multiple passes through the vineyard. Because of all this is an expensive process. These wines end up being expensive wines. Also, because when you go to ferment them, you've lost a lot of volume, so you're actually making a lot less. So these wines are often packaged in smaller bottles, half bottles for Sauterne, small bottle for Tokai as well. So when you ferment these grapes, they have a really high concentration of sugar. And it's funny because you think, oh, well, the yeast must be so happy because they get to eat all this sugar. Well, it actually can be a little problematic. This is another chemistry thing that I'm not going to go into in super detail, but it can slow down the fermentation. Fermentation can get stuck. It's when the yeast stop eating the sugars. So the fermentation process itself can take years. So again, another thing that is adding to the overall cost of this wine, because cash flow, people, it's important. You need to make a wine, you need to sell a wine. And if you are, holding on to it because it takes 2 years to ferment, that is adds to the expense of the wine. Okay. I will talk about the maturation a little later when we get to it, but let's start with our tasting note. Starting with level 1, it is a white wine. On the nose, maybe one of the first things you're going to notice are aromas of honey. Then also some citrus, maybe some tropical fruit. Maybe remember in level 1, we're just sort of getting an idea of what we're smelling here. We don't have to do a deep dive necessarily. On the palate, that's where you get it. Sweet, right? It is a sweet wine with high acidity. Now, remember what I said about acidity being the unsung hero of the wine world? This is a very good example here. It, if you were tasting this sort of an acidity in a dry wine, you would really note it, but because the sugar is so high, you may not notice it right away. But remember, your jawline, your mouth is watering. And if the wine still feels fresh and makes you want to go back and have another sip despite all that sugar, that's the acidity doing its job. We do not talk about tannin. Medium alcohol, so it is 11.5. Full body with all that sugar, definitely full bodied. And you're noting that the flavor's on the palate as well, just like you did on the nose. All right, level 2, now we're getting more specific. So the appearance, gold. It has definitely got a golden color to it, and I'm going to say deep gold. Again, with all of these things, and certainly with the appearance, please calibrate your palate with your teacher's palate, okay? Pronounced intensity on the nose. These aromas are just jumping out of the glass. Level 1, we said honey, citrus, tropical fruit. Well, citrus and tropical fruit are the names of clusters. We need to expand upon it. Honey is one of the classic descriptors for botrytis. Just wanted to make a note of that. So for citrus, grapefruit, lemon, orange peel. I often get quite a bit of marmalade out of wines affected by botrytis. Tropical fruit, mango, melon, passion fruit, pineapple, some stone fruit, peach, apricot, nectarine, and dried fruit. You get like a straight up raisin. So raisin, dried apricots, dried pineapple, and if you thought you smelled vanilla, you are not crazy. There is vanilla in this. This wine spends 2 years in oak barrel and then another year in bottle before it's released. So you are most likely going to be picking up on some oak aromas and flavors. On the palate, it is sweet, high acidity, no mention of tannin, medium alcohol, full-bodied, with pronounced flavors of the same things you wrote for on the nose. Make sure you write it down. Finish. Long. Remember, the definition of a finish is the persistence of multiple pleasant flavors. And I'm still tasting it. I prepped for this podcast and I'm sitting down recording it. I still taste the honey, the apricots, and some other things. So this is a great example of a wine with a long finish. All right, in conclusion, for Blick, it is balanced. Yes. It has length. Yes. It has intensity and or identifiable characteristics. Yes. And is it complex? Yes. This is a very good example of a complex wine. We wrote down quite a few things, and they were from many different clusters. And if you stick your nose back in the glass again, I bet you can discover something new. And for me, that really is a good tell of a complex wine or not. Is it still changing? Is something that was maybe a minor aroma before now more pronounced, and maybe you get a whole different aroma this go round? Complex wine. Okay, so it got 4 out of 4, makes it outstanding. Okay, level 3, appearance, deep gold, pronounced intensity, honey, ginger. I'm adding ginger now. Ginger is also a classic indicator of botrytis. We have our citrus, grapefruit, lemon, orange peel, mango, melon, passion fruit, pineapple, peach, apricot, nectarine, dried fruit, raisins, apricot, dried apricots, dried pineapple, and I get a bit of floral too. Honeysuckle, orange blossom, maybe some like chamomile tea, butterscotch, hay. The list continues. If you've written down a few other things that I haven't mentioned, I'm sure you did, because there are so many things happening in this wine. All right. Development on the nose. This is a bit of a tricky situation because we mentioned honey and we mentioned ginger, and on your SAT card, those are put under the development bucket, the tertiary bucket. However, these are classic descriptors of botrytis itself. So even though we wrote down honey and ginger, those aromas and flavors have come from the grape itself, not from age. So for development on the nose, we're going to say youthful. All right. And this wine is a baby. It has many, many years that it could age. And for finish, we said long. So looking at Blick again, still gets 4 out of 4, makes it outstanding. Level of readiness for drinking. Well, you could drink it now, but it needs some time and it will show even more complexity. So we're going to say can drink now, but has potential for aging. All right. This wine is a blend of 70% ferment and 30% harsh levalu. If you want to get an idea of where the acidity comes from, you can maybe find yourself 100% ferment as a dry white wine. We have one in the shop, and it's a real zinger. So you can see, that's where this wine is really getting a lot of its acidity from, because ferment is naturally high in acidity. I have some nice technical information for you. The residual sugar on this wine, 152 grams per liter, and the total acidity, 9.5 grams per liter. That is really high. If you had a dry white wine that had 9.5 grams per liter of acidity in it, you'd feel it. It might even hurt a little bit. Not for my acid head. I know you love it, but it would be very intense. So it's a really nicely balanced wine. This is a great example of how sweetness and acidity work hand in hand together. So next week, I promise we're going to continue with our series. We're going to do tannin. Tannin is fun to talk about. Thank you for listening. If you have not already subscribed to the Wine Educate weekly newsletter, I encourage you to do so. That is how I let you know when new classes are posted, trips, and I give things to my newsletter folks that I don't give anywhere else. So there's going to be a link in the bio. You'll see an opportunity to sign up. All right, that's all for me. I hope you found this useful and have a great week. Until next time.